For this week's Evaluating Leadership Development Practices assignment, I took a slight bit of license. I'm going to look at two different leadership development models according to the propositions posed to us by Soria and Johnson. I did this to provide a framework to help me better understand these models. And so the first model that I'll be looking at is Generative Leadership by Dan. This is our required course reading, and so I chose this model, also agreeing with its sort of purpose in that it cultivates leadership behaviors among a team through action and collaboration and serves as an alternative to a traditional top-down model. Generative leadership is based on these 6 core elements and 7 related themes. The second model that I chose to look at is the Leadership Challenge based on the work of Kouzes and Posner. The Leadership Challenge is centered on these 5 leadership practices and developing these practices. I chose this one because Kouzes and Posner authored a text that was required from our last course. And then finally, I chose to look at these models through an inclusive leadership lens. Simmons and Yawson share some tenets for inclusive leadership listed here. And as both of these models position themselves as alternative to traditional leadership models, I wanted to explore as to whether or not that meant inclusivity and diversity. And so taking Soria and Johnson's 4 propositions, the first one being engaging in experiential practice, such as community service or holding leadership positions in organizations, we find that these practices align well with both models, generative leadership, through the core elements of opportunity and communication and feedback, and the related themes of organizational philosophy and practice and role modeling, but also aligning to 2 of the central practices of the Leadership Challenge and to the tenets of inclusive leadership, in which these practices provide for improved engagements and interactions and then also increased relational capacity. The second proposition by Soria and Johnson includes diversity experiences in leadership development, maybe such as things such as social interactions or even faculty interactions, professional interactions. Again, we see with both leadership models, there is alignment with the core elements and central practices. And then we also see an alignment with inclusive leadership practices, balancing that self between belongingness and individual leadership development, and then also developing an awareness of self and others through the perceptions and contributions of others in these diversity experiences. Soria and Johnson proposed complex cognitive tasks such as perspective taking, inferring thoughts and feelings, intergroup dialogues. We see alignment with both leadership models and again with inclusive leadership. Here, we see what appears to be building skills, taking the self-awareness gained from diversity experiences, and now through complex cognitive tasks, even taking that a step further through reflection and self-correction to be able to increase that awareness. Finally, Soria and Johnson proposed that there is a diversity in outcomes of leadership development programs. And so with the Leadership Challenge, we see that it positions itself or positions leadership positions specifically as being accessible to all, and it's focused on change, but it also centers very much on the individual experience. And so perhaps one of its weaknesses is that this focus on individual identity may actually mask a lack of inclusivity or diversity. Within generative leadership, we see that it looks, to me, generative leadership feels like it takes much more of an organizational perspective as opposed to an individual perspective. And from this perspective, we can see that now the concept of pulling leaderships from within and throughout a team, leaders have what Simmons and Yawson term organizational talent capital. So by using more of the organizational talent capital they have with them, progress is now more possible or less difficult to achieve. And then finally, here are sources that I have referenced or consulted for this presentation, and I thank you for your time.